Hi there, I'm Jane from Sustain My Craft Habit, and today I want to show you how you can craft with one of my favorite nature found crafting supplies, leaves, to make a beautiful wreath for fall. It's that time of year in our area of the world where our leaves are starting to change colors, and it's the perfect time to collect them and dry them for crafting. We've used dried leaves to make beautiful luminaries, a gnome-themed door hanger, as well as a Halloween garland, amongst other things. We have a whole video on how to expertly dry those leaves. It's super easy to make sure that they retain their color and give you this nice dry texture that you can paint and glue and craft with. So once you've gathered and dried those leaves, we can then make them into a beautiful big fall wreath. For this wreath, we're going to be using several different types of leaves. I have some oak leaves, maple, even mulberry, and the key is to have different colors and even textures and shapes. We're also going to use a grapevine wreath form. Now, this wreath form that I'm using is one my mom made, but you can find grapevine wreaths at the craft store. So I started first by trying to glue the leaves onto the wreath, and that did not work as well because it's hard to get the fullness of the leaves that you need for making a nice big wreath. So instead, we're going to make little leaf clusters using both some twine and a bit of glue. So I started with my largest leaf on the back, and for each cluster, we're going to use about 5 or 6 different sizes and shapes of leaves, and we'll just layer on from largest to smallest each of the leaves. You want to make sure that your leaves have a bit of a stem intact so that you can group them together and tie them with a little bit of twine. I just used some fine jute twine for this. And when you're layering the leaves, consider going so that some are facing outward and some will be facing inward, just to get the widest and largest kind of shape for your cluster. You'll want to use a long enough piece of twine so that it'll have a bit of a tail. I like to use about 6-inch lengths, so that my tail I can tie around the grapevine wreath. You can see here I'm layering now this cluster over the previous ones I had secured onto the wreath, and I'm just weaving that twine around the back side of the grapevine. At this point, you can use a little bit of hot glue just to position that cluster to make sure that it doesn't move around too much, and you can even secure it to the previous cluster that you had placed before. Tying those stems together makes it much easier to work with. Here I didn't tie the stems together first, and you can still get it to wrap around your grapevine wreath, but it's more likely to unravel. So we're just going to continue this process all the way around our wreath, and if you find that there seems to be gaps, you'll just tuck in a few more clusters to fill in the shape. I'm just loving how all these colors are coming together. It's so beautiful. It's hard to believe that these are just from nature. And as we get to the end section of the wreath, you'll just want to tuck in your last clusters underneath the ones that you started with at the beginning of your wreath. And that's our new dried leaf fall wreath. I'd say it's pretty budget friendly, especially if you already have a grapevine wreath at home that you can repurpose, or if you can fashion yourself a wreath of your own. I think we do have a video on how to make a wreath using mulberry branches as well. That could work for this craft. If you're finding some of the clusters are a little bit loose, just use your hot glue gun to secure them both to the grapevine wreath and to the other leaves in the wreath itself. Now, while the wreath with the leaves looks gorgeous on its own to display, I wouldn't put it outside, probably on an indoor wall or door. I had this cute gnome from Hobby Lobby that thought would look really cute placed in the center. I started by decoupaging on this buffalo check napkin using the iron-on method, and then trimming that to the size of the gnome's hat. I used my utility knife and then a little bit of sanding with my sanding block to get all that excess napkin off. And then I painted in some details, including the gnome's nose, as well as added some more white to decoupage that napkin again onto the shorts of the gnome. I used a lovely harvest yellow for the boots and the gloves, and instead of painting the pumpkin, I cut out a mug out of some cardstock paper and hand lettered PSL is life on there because this gnome seems like a fan of the pumpkin spice latte. So now that she's all done, I fixed the gnome cutout onto the wreath just with some invisible twine. I wrapped that around the gnome and then around the wreath form, just careful not to smush my leaves. And in this way, if I want to, I can easily remove the gnome at any time. I hope you enjoyed this DIY fall wreath with dried leaves idea and that it inspired you to get out there and collect and then dry some fall leaves for your crafting.